The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints claims to be the only true church upon the face of the earth. It claims that its revelations are the very Word of God. While these revelations contain quite a bit of spiritual theology, they also make claims about both the physical world and the history of man and the nature of the universe. This means that there are portions of these revelations that can be tested and compared to what we have learned about the natural world. If these revelations are in harmony with the physical evidence, that is, if they do represent truth, then perhaps that means that the source of Joseph's revelations was indeed God. If they are not, if they do not properly represent the truth, then it calls into question the truthfulness and reliability for all of Joseph's revelations. And so we begin with an examination of the physical, literal claims of Mormonism. The first of these claims, taken in chronological order, is that Adam and Eve lived in the literal Garden of Eden, and they fell from that state of grace. The fall of Adam and Eve caused the whole earth to fall with them from a paradisical state to a temporal state. When this happened, not only did Adam and Eve become mortal, but so did the rest of the creation. The Church teaches that there was no death of any kind on earth until after the fall of Adam. According to Mormon doctrine, the fall was the process by which mankind became mortal on this earth. The fall of Adam is one of the most important occurrences in the history of man. Before the fall, Adam and Eve had physical bodies but no blood. There was no sin, no death, and no children among any of the earthly creations. With the eating of the forbidden fruit, Adam and Eve became mortal. Sin entered, blood formed in their bodies, and death became a part of life. Adam became the first flesh upon the earth, meaning that he and Eve were the first to become mortal. After Adam fell, the whole creation fell and became mortal as well. Adam's fall brought both physical and spiritual death into the world and upon all mankind. Latter-day Revelation supports the biblical account of the fall, showing that it was a historical event that literally occurred in the history of man. There are lots of LDS scriptures and quotes from the Brethren that support this doctrine. In the Book of Mormon, Lehi teaches his son Jacob about the necessity of the fall of Adam when he says, "And now behold, if Adam had not transgressed, he would not have fallen, but he would have remained in the Garden of Eden. And all things which were created must have remained in the same state in which they were after they were created, and they must have remained forever, and had no end." In other words, if the fall had not happened, the earth would not have changed from its immortal to its current temporal state. Death would not have entered the world, and mankind would not have gotten its start, as Adam and Eve would not have had any children. The LDS Church teaches that the fall happened about 6,000 years ago. This is in harmony with the literal biblical timeline, and this timeline was confirmed by God himself to Joseph Smith, as recorded in the Doctrine and Covenants, section 77, verses 6 through 7. This section of the Doctrine and Covenants is recorded as a question and answer session between God and Joseph Smith about the biblical text, the Revelation of St. John. Given this unique opportunity for Joseph to ask God about a difficult section of that book, he inquired, "What are we to understand by the book which John saw, which was sealed on the back with 7 seals?" God answered Joseph, "We are to understand that it contains the revealed will, mysteries, and works of God, the hidden things of his economy concerning this earth during the 7,000 years of its continuance, or its temporal existence." This means that, according to God, the earth will only have a temporal or mortal existence of about 7,000 years. Joseph then asked, "What are we to understand by the 7 seals with which the book, was sealed?" God answered, "We are to understand that the first seal contains the things of the first 1,000 years, and the second also of the second 1,000 years, and so on until the 7th. Since the 7th seal supposedly begins with the second coming of Christ and contains the millennium, it is still in the future. This means that according to this revelation given to Joseph by God, the earth entered its current temporal state about 6,000 years ago. So how do we go about testing this claim? If this doctrine, supported by Joseph Smith's revelations and the Book of Mormon, is true, then there should be no evidence of plants, animals, or people dying before the revealed timeline of about 4000 BC. If it can be proven that things lived and died well before that, then it would disprove Joseph's revelations and Mormon doctrine on this point. So what kind of physical evidence can we look at to test this claim?
There are fossils. Whenever anybody tries to tell me that they believe it took place in 7 days, I reach for a fossil and go, fossil. And if they keep talking, I throw it just over their head.
So let's start with fossils. Fossils are the preserved remains or traces of animals, plants, and other organisms. A fossil normally preserves only a portion of the dead organism, such as the bones or teeth or the shell. This process takes a very long time. So how long? How can we date a fossil? Well, one way in which the fossils are dated is to find out the age of the rocks that they are contained in. There are numerous ways to perform dating on the rocks, and all of these tests confirm that the age of these different layers and the fossils contained therein are tens of millions of years old. The oldest animal fossils are from the Cambrian period, and they have been dated to be around 540 million years old at the oldest. The Cambrian period was followed by other epochs, each lasting tens of millions of years. All during this time, life existed, evolved, and died. The fossil record shows a slow, continual change from unfamiliar-looking animals towards those that look more like the animals we see today. Another physical evidence we can look at are fossil fuels. The fossil fuels that power our society are the result of anaerobic decomposition of buried dead animals. It takes a very long time for these dead organisms to become oil, natural gas, or coal. The age of the organisms and the resulting fossil fuels is typically millions of years. The existence of these fossil fuels, along with the fossil record, are very strong physical evidences that plants and animals have been living and dying on the earth for hundreds of millions of years. This is completely at odds with the claims of Mormonism and the revelations of Joseph Smith. I have encountered apologists, defenders of this doctrine, who say that it only was applicable to life that was within the Garden of Eden. They say that outside the garden, life had existed and evolved as God prepared the earth for us, his children, to inherit it. For the sake of argument, I will pretend that Mormon doctrine does not mean what it plainly says, and assume that they are correct, and that the revelation of scriptures do not apply to the plants and animals that lived outside the garden. However, when it comes to Mormon doctrine, an exception cannot be made for human beings. And the reason for this is the second claim we will examine, that Adam and Eve were the first parents of the entire human race.